We're back with Joel Rosenberg, best-selling author, the new book, The Beirut Protocol. Joel, in a recent interview, you said that God loves the people of Gaza. Gaza is actually mentioned in the Bible. But then you also said that the sufferings of the people of Gaza are the responsibility of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Say a word about the biblical connection to Gaza, and then talk about who is the real cause of the sufferings of the Palestinian people. Well,
I'll try to make that brief. Yes, the good news is God absolutely loves the people of Gaza and the Palestinian people more broadly. And I think it's too seldom that evangelicals say this. We know that God loves our neighbors, but even if we see them as enemies, Jesus commands us to love our enemies. So however we see them, we have to see them as made in the image of God. And again, I'm someone who loves Israel. I couldn't be more happy to be an Israeli citizen and to have my boys serve in the army here and so forth. But we absolutely must love Palestinians. And the tragedy that's going on there, yes, the Bible mentions Gaza 22 times. Most Christians don't even realize that it's a factor in the Bible. But it's also was the base camp in biblical times of the Philistine armies that kept marauding and terrorizing the Jewish people, the nation of Israel. So this is a problem. It's been a source of a problem for millennia. At the moment, the reason that there's so much trouble there is because of two terrorist organizations: Hamas, which is the radical Islamist version of the terrorist organization in Egypt known as the Muslim Brotherhood. That's a global organization, but it started in Egypt. And Egypt was once in charge of Gaza, so it's not surprising. But the other group is Islamic Jihad. They're both funded by Iran. They're both armed by Iran and directed mostly by Iran. So this is the reason. It's not the Palestinian people of Gaza that Israel has any issues with. It's the terror regimes that are holding the people hostage and have fired now more than 4,000 rockets. In fact, as you and I are talking, my app on my phone is going crazy because more rockets are inbound.
Yeah. Now, in America, it appears that the Democratic Party, which was at one point, I think it's fair to say, fairly strongly pro-Israel. You say in one of your articles that Biden may be the last remnant of that. He seems to be the only pro-Israel guy left in the Democratic Party. But there certainly seems to be a groundswell led by people like Rashida Tlaib, who not only see Israel as the source of the problem, but make analogies between, let's say, Israel and the Palestinians as compared to, say, the situation facing whites and blacks in the United States. So an effort to sort of draw an oppression parallel between what's going on over there and what's going on over here. How do you view these developments from Israel happening in the United States with, I would say probably Israel's longtime and strongest historic ally?
Yeah. Well, Dinesh, it's interesting. You're citing some articles from All Israel News, the website that we launched last September to try to provide balanced, accurate coverage, exclusive coverage, but also links to key good stories from other media publications here in the region. And this war is exactly the reason we've had to do this, because there's so much bias and there's so much hostility to Israel. Imagine a country being attacked with 4,000 missiles, and then the rest of the world, including and especially the media, saying that we're at fault. So what you've got now, I did this big article on All Israel News about the left wing, the far left, which is increasingly taking over the American Democratic Party. And I would just note, specifically what I said was that President Biden is the most pro-Israel in his party. He's not the only. And then I would still say the majority is still pro-Israel, but he's the best that the party has, and he's fighting off a movement that includes Senator Bernie Sanders, who is not only huge politically powerful in the Democratic Party, even though he technically is an independent, but it's also because he's Jewish. And so he carries this weight. Well, he's Jewish, and he thinks that the Israelis are acting like Nazis, that we are, apartheid, that we are demonizing and destroying the lives of Palestinians, and our regime, our government here is racist and horrible. So this carries a lot of weight. But Elizabeth Warren has picked up that. She used to be pro-Israel, not anymore. And then Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, the crowd, the squad is growing. The bottom line is Biden is under enormous pressure to force Israel to stop defending ourselves. That's what a ceasefire technically is, if it's premature. You and I both want a ceasefire. None of us want to see a war. But a premature ceasefire, if it's forced on Israel, is actually a victory for Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And let me quote with one more thought, if I could.
Yeah,
I would just say that the far left in the Democratic Party in America right now are becoming human shields, politically protecting Hamas and the radical Islamist terror movement rather than helping stand with Israel.
Here's a quotation from your writings from Ron Dermer, Israel's former ambassador. He goes, Hamas launched this attack against us. When somebody comes over to you and clubs you and then says, we would like a ceasefire, you don't just listen to them and accept the ceasefire. The Israeli people want to make sure the ceasefire will be a long-term pause in hostilities. So I think what he seems to be saying is that what Israel wants to do is inflict enough pain on these terrorists so that you get a genuine cessation of hostilities, and this doesn't just become a strategic victory which allows Hamas to remobilize and then do it again.
That's exactly right, Dinesh. You've 100% accurately analyzed it. And it's not just pain. We want to physically degrade, if not fully destroy, the actual infrastructure, the terror tunnels that run for dozens and dozens of miles under Gaza, that move around the armies, as well as the weapons and the missiles and the rockets that they have, as well as the launchers and the intelligence sites and communications facilities. We're doing that. And look, at some point, and I hope it's soon, it may be by the time, by this weekend, I hope that Israel will feel genuinely we can stop if we have peace, if quiet for quiet. One other thing, I moved here with my family in 2014. We became citizens. We happened to arrive during the last big rocket war with Gaza, okay? Now, that war lasted 7 weeks. 4,500 rockets were fired at Israel in 7 weeks. 4,100 rockets have been fired at us in 12 days. So the intensity of this war is much bigger than last time. But one other point is important for your viewers and listeners. In the last war that we fought with Hamas, more than 2,500 Palestinians in Gaza were killed. A bunch of them were terrorists, but some of them were innocent civilians. It's very difficult to fight in an urban environment when they're firing the rockets from schools, hospitals, mosques, factories. But in this war, with roughly the same number of rockets fired at us, fewer than 250 Palestinians have been killed, and half of those at least are definitely terrorists. So we're talking about a 90% drop in the civilian casualty rate in a war roughly as intense. And I think that really speaks to Israel. If we wanted to kill Palestinians, we have the firepower to kill tens, hundreds of thousands. But this is 90% less than last time. And I think it's a testimony. Every life is valuable, and Palestinian lives do matter, but so do Jewish lives. And Hamas is the one destroying them, not Israel. And it's a very dangerous game and a lot of slander against us.
Joel, this is all very insightful and, quite frankly, all stuff that I didn't know, stuff that I don't see in the U.S. media. So I really want to thank you for coming on and talking about it and revealing it. I do want to recommend your new book, The Beirut Protocol. I'm just going to read a line about it. The U.S. is brokering an historic Saudi-Israel peace deal, but a major war erupts between Israel and Iran. So, Joel, you're right on these developments. You're writing about them in fiction. You're analyzing them in nonfiction. You're doing an important work. Thanks very much for coming on the broadcast.
Dinesh, it's been great to be with you, and I appreciate the vote of confidence for what we're doing at All Israel News. I hope it becomes something that people find useful and valuable, including signing up for our email alerts to get it directly to their desktop or phones. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Great to be with you.